I think nowadays poor leaders get exposed very quickly because, what do they say? People leave leaders rather than the business. And I think that's probably a symptom sometimes that you would see that. So, and we all know today trying to attract and retain talent is key to any business,
So hi, Oliver. Thank you so much for being here. Really appreciate you joining me on Owning Your Legacy. And let's get started with, I'd really like to hear your story and your background.
Thank you, Laurette. I do appreciate the invite. I joined Kerry Group as a graduate in 1991. I had a degree in agriculture, worked for a few years in Ireland in our dairy business, and then we had a meat business, that time a meat processing business. It was a much smaller part of the organisation. I went to the UK in probably 1994, started to manage key accounts over there, Marks and Spencer, Tesco, Sainsbury's, the big retailers at the time. Spent 15 years in the UK. After a few years in the meat division, we decided to exit it. It wasn't for Kerry as a business, so we found the meat ingredients business much better, and meat processing. So we decided to exit it, and then I went into the bakery business, bakery ingredients. We had just acquired DCA, which obviously was a North American business, but had a European business, but predominantly a UK business. So I spent a few years there, and then we acquired Shade Foods in North America in 2000. And they obviously had a European business as well, and we put some businesses together and came up with their sweet ingredients business. Spent 8 years at that, and in 2008 we actually started what we called One Kerry, where we brought everything together. Here in North America we built Beloit, and we brought all of our DNA and applications together. We started a similar journey in Europe, and put a centre there as well. Probably 2014, 2015. But I came back to Ireland in 2008 and took on our global accounts business. So dealing with all the global accounts. I also took on food service as well at that time, the food service business. And I spent a good few years on global accounts and food service, building a team, growing our business. And then in 2018, I was asked to come to North America to take on the food service business and our direct to retail business, which was quite a big part of North America's business at the time. I didn't think, honestly, I would move again, but I'm happy I did. And my wife is happy; she did as well. We enjoy North America a lot. And look, in 2022, I was asked to take on the North American CEO and president role. So I've been in that role probably over the last 18 months, and it's been quite a journey if you take COVID into consideration, and then stepping up into that role with all the dynamics out there, which I know you're very used to yourself, having your own business.
Congratulations, that's a big role.
Thank you.
So you've worked under many different leaders in the years that you've been at Kerry, and I'd love you to talk a little bit about the difference in culture even of different leadership, and some of the cultures that aligned with your values, maybe some that, you found it harder or more difficult, but kind of talk about just that journey.
All of the leaders have been pretty inspirational that I've worked for. I've been very fortunate. The other thing that I think has happened is, if I was due to move in a role, those leaders weren't selfish. They would let me move on, even though maybe I was in an important role working for them.
They believed in letting you develop and grow.
Exactly. And I think that's been a kind of an ingredient of Kerry's success. The graduate program, giving people exposure very quickly, very fast, under good leaders, allowing them to grow. Mobility was a big part of it. So exposure to different regions, in different geographies and different types of businesses. So moving across different types of businesses over your tenure. And I always felt that was very consistent across all leaders, and I was very fortunate. And then roll on a few years, I was in that same position myself with very good people that said, well, I'd like that person to stay another 2 years. They're not fully developed, but you gotta you got to do what's best for them as well. And, you know, so you have to, you know, what you wouldn't like is somebody not having that conversation with you. And if they were talking kind of, you know, and there was an opportunity, yeah. But you've also got to make sure that you know, people can, you know, be successful when they move on, that they do have enough to that it's a kind of a calculated, let's say, calculated risk rather than a risk, that you give them the skills to be successful and you set them up for success when they go in, and maybe make sure they're going to an environment where they do get that mentorship and leadership that they were used to, and the skills to succeed. But look, you know, we've all had lots of very good leaders, and we've all had lots of people who maybe didn't lead as well as they could. I've been very fortunate that I've had lots of very good leaders.
And sometimes you learn just as much almost, you know, from some leaders that you're like, that's not exactly how I would want to lead. And it teaches you what you want to bring to the role. I
fully agree. Where you say, I wouldn't do it that way, I do it this way.
Right.
And I think that's always a learning as well. And I think that's, if you can get that learning out of it as well, it works for you. But no, over, you know, I would say over the main, it's been a positive experience with some very good leaders. And I think nowadays poor leaders get exposed very quickly.
True.
Because, you know, what do they say? People leave leaders rather than the business.
Yes.
And I think that's probably a symptom sometimes that you would see that. So, and we all know today, trying to attract and retain talent is key to any business, you know.
So what's the leadership style that you try to achieve, or culture, or what's most important to you?
Yeah, I think the first thing is teamwork. I'm big believers in being a team. I played a lot of sports when I was younger, and you can achieve a lot as a team. We've all seen the individuals, very high contributors, but they need to fit into a team as well. So I'm always a big believer in teamwork. The other thing I believe in a lot of it is empowerment, empowering people to make the decisions and lead and get on with the business day to day. I'm not a micromanager. I don't believe that's the right way to manage. I know some people think it is, but I'm not. And, you know, I haven't been micromanaged myself over my career. And I believe it's healthy then to check in with people and make sure they feel you're there to support them. You're fully behind them. You're fully behind them and their teams. You're encouraging them to succeed. I think and you have their back. I think that's very important. That's kind of my style. Yeah, trust, and giving younger people opportunities, or people you feel, you know, getting to step up and challenge themselves a little bit. Some people maybe get into a comfort zone, and getting them out of the comfort zone. So it is, yeah, that's kind of, and also maybe trying to be uncomfortable with people that have different skill sets to you, because today in our company we need different skill sets all the time. You know, you have to be very comfortable with people coming in, challenging you. You might necessarily know all the detail, but they know the detail. So you've got to accept that and make the decisions around that.
And use the people that are closest to the problem. I'm a firm believer of that. You know, they know what the problems are.
Absolutely.
So do you have any tips or tricks on how you create teamwork or inclusive? I know you talk a lot about inclusive as well, and really creating an inclusive environment. So anything that you would share with our listeners that you feel like is a really good...
Maybe there's a couple of things. I try to be openly transparent. You know, I probably sometimes tell too much, but I feel that if people feel you're trusting them to tell them what's going on and what, you know, then I think they do respond very well. So I think that's one thing. I would be a bit openly transparent with people as to maybe what's the real issue. I can be a bit direct as well, and rather than, you know, beating around the bush and, you know, coming to something, I might get there.
Candor is good.
I might get there very quickly.
They say that's kind, quite frankly. And
yeah.
Sometimes I have a challenge with that, but that's
and
good.
Look, I've seen it work very much for the company by doing that, because people then suddenly find where their level is, or they realize, okay, well, I gotta do this or do that. The other thing I would say is, from a recruitment perspective, if you make sure you have the right pool of candidates, always give it to the right candidate. I think then you'll move your numbers on diversity quicker than you think. I do believe, but you have to have the right number of individuals and the right genders, etc. Going for the role.
And then it happens organically.
It happens organically.
I
After
totally
that.
agree.
Yeah.
I think we talk about authentic belonging at Edlong, which is kind of along the lines of inclusive and really letting people be who they are and shine at what they're good at. But yeah, as far as diversity goes, it's better when it's organic, I think. Okay, let's switch over and talk a little bit about exactly what you were touching on there of attracting and retaining talent. And especially with, well, we know it's really hard to find people right now, that the unemployment rate is incredibly low and just finding that talent is hard. So talk about the challenges and what you guys do to try to overcome some of that.
Yeah, I'd say we're no different to anybody in any business today trying to attract talent. Again, it's back to we're probably trying to bring in more specialists than generalists in a lot of cases. I would say, as a company, I'd say we would have had generalists did well in a certain part of our growth journey. But I think now with the way we've kind of diversified our portfolio, we probably need more specialists, whether it's in taste or proactive health or food waste or whatever. The people we want are not sitting at home waiting for a phone call. That's the reality. They're working, they're part of it, they're on a career trajectory with another company. So we do use headhunters, maybe try to get specialist headhunters. We have our own talent acquisition team. I like to use word of mouth because I think, you can get people who vet people very quickly. But one thing you have to do is you've got to be very clear when you're meeting the candidate what the role is. I mean, there can be no real ambiguity. It's got to be what the role is, what your expectations are, what good looks like in the role for them, and then what the career journey is from there on in, because you're trying to attract them and sell the company to them and take them away from where they are today. So I think,
totally agree.
You've got to be very concise, and there is an element where I see it now where, the pendulum has switched a little bit. You used to interview people. They nearly interview you now.
Yep.
So you have to allow for that part of it, that instead of the 10 minutes for questions, it might be, I'm going to give you half an hour.
Yes. And I think that your background in sales probably is hugely beneficial in getting that talent and selling them. Because I agree with you. It's different now. You have to.
It's useful.
So talk a little bit more about, what is it that we as companies can do to really look attractive to these, this top talent that we're trying to pry away from sometimes our competitors or sometimes other industries. But, the food industry is so small. So we're usually definitely playing with the same pool of talent, aren't we? But what could we do to be the one that wins them over?
Yeah, I think it's about how you're going to be different from where they are today. I think a lot of the younger generation want to see a purpose. So they want to join a company with purpose. We did a lot of work on our purpose 3 to 4 years ago.
And what is yours?
Our purpose is inspire food, nourish life.
Love that.
So, and we regularly, that came from, I would say, all 21,000 employees that we have.
That's a lot of employees.
Had a say in
And those are hard.
Yeah.
To come up with purpose is very hard. Ours is to enrich the lives of those we touch. And it's old. It's been around for Edlong and for a while. And it still fits, though. It's so nice when you get the one that you're like, this fits internally, externally.
And then obviously, any programs you're doing from a sustainability perspective are very important. What you're giving back to the community. I think, engagement is very important, communication, transparency of communication, how you engage with your employees.
Is there anything you do from a teamwork or from like a fun perspective, like even silly games, or like, is there anything that you do to kind of get, especially with that many employees around the world? I mean, trying to get them all connected must be crazy.
We kind of leave it to the sites individually where we have a lot of, our manufacturing base. We empower the sites to do something themselves. So there is a lot of goes on there. I mean, last year we celebrated our 50th anniversary. So globally, every site did something, and it was great to see the roll up every day of the different activities.
Look at what you guys have accomplished in 50 years. It's kind of a baby, really.
It has, to be fair.
Yeah, that is unbelievable.
You have to credit the earlier generation for
Vision.
the vision, and let's say the vision and the calculated in terms of the acquisitions,
Execution.
and I guess even coming to North America was quite a big step for Kerry that time. They kind of went, let's say, west instead of east at the time, and I think it's paid off hugely. And because look, a lot of successful acquisitions there that have been the bedrock of the growth for the company today. And we still have a lot of those characters that are still around and we see regularly. So it was great to see them all back at the 50th celebration we had last Christmas back in Kerry in various events. But yeah, look, we do try and do a lot of that. We try to be relevant to our communities, give something back all the time. Again, we're up against the labour challenges that anybody else is. So trying to make your site part of the community to attract the talent that they're coming in. There's more of a proposition for the employee than just the paycheck,
Right.
which is very important. But just that, that they feel part of a community, and maybe their families feel part of it as well. They're part of a sports team that we sponsor or whatever, that's
Right.
important.
So kind of thinking about the millennials and the Gen Zs, what do you look for in terms of determining if they're a good fit for Kerry?
We're fortunate to have a 28-year-old and 24-year-old at home. So boy and girl. So the reality is that you learn a lot about their behaviours very quickly.
Absolutely.
So you can kind of see some of the behaviours. Look, you're looking for sometimes even simple things like, what was your school job?
I love that. That's important.
So you can kind of see where, what kind of work ethic is there, or what they aspire
service
to.
that they know how to serve.
Yeah, exactly. That's the point. And that they could get up out of bed in the morning to do a paper round at 6 a.m. or something like that.
And I think even your comment about sports, I played basketball in high school, absolutely not like a great athlete or anything, but you learn so much even just playing in high school about team. And I've often said, so my one, I've got a bunch of in that age group too, but my 27-year-old played Division I football. And I always tell them, you don't see that on a resume very often, if ever. And that work ethic is insane, what they go through. So I agree, like looking at you can train or teach a lot of the other stuff, but that work ethic it's either there or not. And I was reading an article, getting ready for our little chat, that was so interesting around this generation had all their play dates scheduled, and they really didn't have any time to just go outside and play like we did when we were little. And I would be like, get out of the house. We'll see you at dusk when the lights come on. And they were so no freedom to explore. And how do you think that affects this generation now in the workplace?
I think COVID really brought it home to me,
Yes.
because, young people need mentorship, advice, guidance, the corridor conversations, the lunch, the breakfast, the cups of coffee. When that environment wasn't there for them, I would say, some of them probably got into bad habits and weren't learning as quick as they should or as fast as they should. And I think it's also important they have good leadership, because there's nothing as bad as somebody probably sitting under a poor leader for 4 or 5 years and they don't learn as
Right.
much. So, those ages are very impressionable. So I think it's very important. And we have a graduate program. So we're fortunate that we think out the moves over kind of 2 years. It's a very intentional program to develop talent and bring it through the organization very, very quickly, expose you to different functions, different sites.
How do you
and
get in
abilities.
are you chosen to get in the program?
It's you go through an interview process. We now use an external firm to screen a lot of them first. I mightn't have got in if that external firm was around that time.
I'm sure you would have.
So, and then look, even some of the executives would even do some of the interviews as well. But you kind of, I'm strongly getting behind it this year as well, and getting the executive team behind it. We're bringing in, I think we've 34 in North America, and we've allocated them out to, ops roles, supply chain roles, marketing, or DNA, even sales.
Do they get to take a break from their current role to do this, to cross train, or
They do. Well, actually, there's kind of a career path. So somebody coming into sales might spend time in
applications,
customer care.
Yeah, okay.
Maybe then go into marketing and then maybe go into sales, or they might come into sales and work as a sales supporting maybe salespeople that are out on the road, and liaise with them, but then get exposure to the customer maybe within 6 to 12 months,
Okay.
and then over time be part of a team. And so.
But as far as the graduate program goes, it's a lot of seeing all different aspects of the business.
Yeah, it would be. And then maybe manufacturing sites, we might put some finance people in to be operational finance people on a manufacturing site.
That must be hysterical.
Go down on the floor. Yeah.
I love that.
And, people maybe become production managers, might
Or put the
work on
finance
line.
people out in sales.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I'm not sure that would work.
Might be dangerous.
Yeah. They're experts at times to tell salespeople how to sell, but
Yeah.
but look, we love them to bits. But yeah, no, it's great. It's great exposure.
Are you the first non-accountant president of Kerry in history, or has there been others?
If I go back, maybe Finbar O'Driscoll
Yeah.
was probably.
Yeah.
You probably knew Finbar
I
back
did.
many years ago, but I actually only spoke to him on Friday. He rang somebody I was with, so that will tell you. But yeah, no, I think he was probably the first one
to break the mold.
that broke the mold.
Yeah.
And then obviously I don't think there's been Kevin Lane probably.
Yes.
Yeah.
Good friend.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. True salesman at heart. So what has been your greatest leadership challenge?
There are various challenges you get along your career that help set yourself up for later challenges. When I took the business unit role for sweet ingredients back in 2000, we had 3 different sites operating differently that needed to be pulled together to form a business. There wasn't really a clear strategy. We had 2 or 3 customers that were the big part of it. So there was no team. So I had to start and build a team. Put somebody in the finance role, put somebody in the marketing role, build even customer care to form the business unit. So I'd say that was a challenge for a while. Then you had to decide on the portfolio, the resources. But there was great support and help for me to do that, and encouragement for me to do that. And then there was an acquisition that came at the time, and the company had 3 partners who were used to doing their own thing.
Ooh.
So used to signing their own CapEx forms, all that kind of thing. I remember the first day I took over, I got a phone call from one of them. He wanted to buy a bus.
A bus?
To bus people to work. And I said, well,
it's better than a plane.
Oh, well, it's only going to cost £5,000. And I said, look, we're not going to do that. And I had to talk him out of it. So I had to manage a lot of different characters. And get them thinking the way we wanted to think, and the purpose of why we made that acquisition and the significance of it. And, then we had to focus on a new set of customers. We had a new portfolio. We were good at manufacturing certain ingredients and not good at others. And you had to go through the portfolio and say, we're better at this. We're not good at this. Let's stop doing this. It's not going to make a lot of money for us. This is. And then you had to put a kind of a plan together for the 3 to 5 years of that business. So that was a big challenge, and it took a lot of time, energy, effort. But it was a great journey personally for me, and then I'd say for a lot of individuals in Kerry came out of that business unit too, and did well over time. And look, coming over here, was a challenge. You're in a different country. I didn't know a lot of the customers. I had to try and get to meet customers very quickly. I had a team, and I didn't know, the quality of the team and capability of the team. It's very hard to do that without spending time with them all, and it was a big team. So I think that was probably one of the probably the second biggest challenge. And look, then you had COVID coming, and obviously that was a a big challenge for everybody. I think everybody was thrown into that, no matter how experienced or inexperienced you were. We had heard COVID because we've quite a big business in China.
Yeah.
So we had
You were ahead of it.
the
Yeah.
rumblings were there, and then they did a great job, our integrated operations team, in keeping our colleagues in China safe, and had done a lot of work really quickly that we could deploy very quickly over here and deploy in Europe and in Latam as well. So we were very fortunate, I guess, from that perspective, that we could do that because they had done that in China. But yeah, look, it was tough, even
It was
personally.
bonding, though. Personally, it was ridiculously tough. And having my one son has learning disabilities, so the whole that school thing, like his light was just going out. It was horrible. And then the teachers would just yell at me, "You're not, I'm like, I can't sit next to him and teach all day. That's like not my strength by any stretch, nor do I have the time." But yeah, I think, and I'm just absolutely proud of how our team handled it. And then even in Chicago, there was a couple of us flavor companies that just, grouped together and said, if you ever, we all knew that, a whole team of operations people could be down, because they were kind of in close quarters and supporting each other. Never really had to do too much of it, thank God, but it was just so nice to know that people were there and willing to help. And
It was, I'd say it was exemplary how the food industry and beverage industry got together and
agree.
kept everybody safe. And
Even to supply chain,
Yeah,
people,
supply chain.
competitors would call each other, do you have any? Do you have any? And like
Keep 'em-
everyone was willing to help each other and stay alive. Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see all the movies and books and everything written about.
they'll come eventually.
Yeah. So Oliver, let me know what you learned or how you guys pivoted during COVID.
Yeah, so just going back to maybe what you said earlier, Laurette, I think very important to keep your people safe first and foremost. You want people coming to work safe and going home safe. I think that's kind of the bottom line, which is imperative. So I think that was first, to make sure that we were getting mixed messages, because you work across different states. So you had to be consistent and make sure that was kind of, the mantra there. I have to call out our DNA team because they come in every day.
Yes.
We obviously had segregation in the building. We segregated the building. We had different teams working together, but with social distancing, all of that. So all the protocols were in place. The RDNA team and some of the other teams came in and were exemplary how they kept things going. We also were very fortunate that we talked to our customers all the time, even though, some of them were at home, a lot of them were at home, whether it was getting samples over to their houses or things like that. Everybody
has everybody's home address now.
Let's keep, yeah. And as you said, look, we helped our neighbours, we helped customers. Some of them ran out of masks. We sent masks. We made sure we had enough for ourselves, but we helped as many people as we could. But we kept the supply chain going. We kept product going into our customers, so they could keep it on the shelves for consumers and for their customers. So,
did you do anything to keep the team united?
I mean, look, we kind of said to the RDNA team, we're going to give you lunch every day.
It's the least we could do.
Little things like that.
Yeah.
That meant a lot to them. I had a personal situation where my wife had gone back to Ireland. She couldn't get back in so I was 3 months over here. So I used to go to the office every day myself.
She couldn't get back in for 3 months?
She couldn't get back in for 3 months because of the visa situation. It was kind of all up in the air at the time.
Nobody
then it
processing them
Yeah.
probably. And
So embassies were shut, all of that kind of thing. So it was kind of tough. But look, staying in touch with people.
How old were your kids at that time then?
They were back in Ireland. So,
they were with her in Ireland.
My wife was with the two kids because one was in college and one was actually working. So their office in college was shut down. So they were all together.
Gotcha. That's good. Well, that's good.
At least they were. Yeah, that was. I was happy once they were all together. I didn't mind, but you had to make sure you had to extra communicate to people because you weren't meeting them in the corridor. You weren't able to drop into their office. So you had to, get back using the phone.
Right.
I think we fell into a bad habit of conference calls and Zooms and whatever else you want to.
How is it for you guys returning to normal or whatever we're calling this now?
I think it's been very good. I think our people have adopted very well. We're on a hybrid working at the moment, which is 3 days a week.
Do they get to pick their 3 days, or how does that
Yeah,
go?
they kind of pick their 3 days. You can probably guess what 3 they are.
Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Everybody's in on
Snap.
Tuesday. Yep.
So yeah, look, it is that. But look, yeah, I think we've adopted well. The other thing is, I think we did a lot of internal meetings. We're cycling out of those, and we're back very customer focused and
Thank God,
very
right?
externally
Those
focused.
of us that love
yeah, exactly.
the customer relation,
And I
I
think
missed that tremendously.
The sales team have been, exceptional in how they've pivoted that way as well, because it was tough for them as well at home. I would say that, and it's about keeping contact with people, keeping connectivity. So I think that was the most important thing that I learned. If you're not meeting people regularly, face to face, get on the phone, talk to them. Keep people up to date with what's going on.
There was silver linings, I do, but what you're mentioning was definitely some silver linings to the whole experience. We started doing all company forums monthly, and just making and ended up realizing that it was a really good format. We used to do them in a big room, and then the other locations would have to call in, like Mexico and Ireland. And this kind of leveled the playing field, that now everybody was calling in, so they weren't like the outsiders. And the chat box thing was wild, hysterical often. But that was unity in itself, of the people just being able to, they were just joking around and talking in that, and trying to get people to talk in a real live setting was like pulling teeth.
Yeah, look, the chat function is obviously a big indicator of how engaged
and how
people are with what you're doing,
and how they're doing emotionally.
Totally.
Even, that was
whether they're motivated or whatever. And we did a lot of that as well, just like you were saying, and we did monitor the chat box and input ourselves into the chat box to make sure and you also have to. Recognition is very important.
Yes.
In these, people do go above and beyond. In these circumstances, people do a lot more. I mean, we had some of our salespeople that put product in the boot of their car and drove it to the customers, or the trunk, as you say.
I love the boot. I love that. Boot sale.
So, and you have to recognize that and make sure that you're continually recognizing the efforts people go to.
Right.
It's a small thing, but it's a big thing for them.
And when they recognized each other, we had a moment, one of our guys started this fund of the gas money he was saving, and then had, told everybody in the company, and ended up getting a couple $1,000s, and that went to all the operations people and the R&D people that were in. And he wrote hand notes to each of them. It was beautiful. It was, and colleague to colleague. I loved that.
I think it brought the best out of people, really.
I think so too. So Oliver, do you see a difference in recognition, expectation based on generations, or what age they are?
Yeah, I would say maybe, and I'm not sure, I don't want to stigmatize anybody here, but I would say maybe recognition wasn't a big part of maybe the older generation.
I would agree.
And I would say
you might get a pat on the back if you're lucky.
You might get a pat on the back every 5 years.
Yes.
But I think what's more important now is for the millennials, and I do think that people do need to feel appreciated, and you can appreciate people in a different way than a pat on the back as well. Mm-hmm. We do what we call the Inspire Awards every quarter, where we pick a team or we pick an individual for doing some really, I would say, good things, whether it's in the community, whether it's in the business. And we take time out. And I would say one thing that we would always used to start our management meetings with the financials. We now start and talk about people.
Nice.
It's been a big change, but it's been the right change for us. And we talk about people all the time at the start. And, we decide the nominees and agree and align as a team. And then every quarter we would have a webcast, and we would obviously talk about their achievements and what they've done, and present the awards live in front of the North American Kerry community. So that's been very good for us. We've got great feedback, but there's been some great recipients as well. So I would say that's
the tricky part, I would say, and it has to be obviously authentic, and the bar has to be high enough.
Exactly.
And I love it, but I know that we do some of that too, and sometimes we're like, that's just their job. It has to be.
No, it has to be something
very outstanding and exceptional. So what do you think in terms of of that, of the millennials and Gen Zs, what are they looking for? Like, what motivates them? And obviously,
I think
recognition.
I'd go back still, Laurette, to purpose. I think
Purpose
purpose,
money. Do you think money is a big motivator?
it is obviously, but it's maybe not as big as you would think it is. Well, what I feel, money is. I mean, obviously, I would say a lot of between property inflation, housing inflation, food inflation, everything. I would say that maybe some of the salaries have not kept pace with that. So it is important to them. But I say purpose, being motivated, being part of a company that has let's say, is steeped in sustainability and ESG, gives something back to the community. They see a career trajectory for them, and they feel appreciated. I'd say is as important as maybe the the monetary values that that comes with the role. So I think that's very important, and I just don't think people should lose sight of that. They're not as loyal as maybe
Right.
Previous, let's say, generations. They're not as loyal.
I read something, I think it was a LinkedIn study. 70% of the men and women in that generation are looking to leave in the next year, the job that they're in. 70%.
It's a high turnover rate.
Do you feel that at Kerry?
I don't see that at Kerry, to be honest with you. I think, and
Well,
maybe
that's
the
good.
graduate program helps that
Right.
a certain amount. I think we do a better job on maybe, the appreciative, exposing them.
And they have freedom. I mean, if I was that age, I'd be loving all the travel you could do with Kerry. All the different locations you could probably work at if you really wanted to.
No, that's true. That's true. I mean, yeah, look, geographic relocation or whatever is very important. People, I'd say millennials and Gen Zs like that. There's no question about that. They like to be involved in projects as well, that maybe significant projects at the company, whether it's, a CapEx or a marketing program or something like that, that's very focused and has a timeline on it. And I think so.
Make an impact.
Yeah, where they can see an impact pretty quickly.
So, Oliver, what advice would you give a young person that's just entering into the workforce now?
My advice would be, make sure you understand the role you're going into and what's required of it and what good looks like in it. Because I think if you can do what good looks like, then you'll progress. I would also, make sure that they have a regular cadence of meetings with their line manager to get that feedback and to make sure, that they're on the same train of thought and they're progressing the way they should be. Because I think sometimes that doesn't happen as much as maybe it could or it should. But it's
I like
very
that
important.
point of that they should take the initiative, because some of us get really busy and we might not do that enough, and that they really, we need to chat, make sure I'm on the right path. I think that's good advice.
And what you might think is that they're fine. Oh, sure, I met them a couple of weeks back. It's clear, whatever. There may be something there that there isn't. And then, maybe having other people check in with them as well is very important, so that they build a bit of a network pretty quickly. So advising them to maybe get involved in something that's work related, whether it's a sports club or some initiative that there is going on in the business, that they can start to network and, meet peers and share stories, feedback, whatever. So, they broaden their network a bit. I would encourage people to get a broader network.
Especially after COVID and like we were talking about, and coming back into the office, and that human connection, and really making the most of that and embracing that seems like very good advice. So, Oliver, what do you think the legacy is that the generation of Gen Zs and millennials would like to leave behind?
I think they'd like to make sure they lived the purpose of the organization. I think they'd like to, ensure that the company met its purpose and its mission. I would think they would want that they had evolved the company in the right direction as well, with talent, diversity, inclusion,
Sustainability.
sustainability,
Yeah.
making sure people bringing themselves to work, very comfortable bringing themselves to work. And, I'd say maybe there's probably more on the way in terms of digitalization,
AI and
automation,
then
all of those things that I think, bringing technology into the business more.
yeah, that AI stuff is amazing. It was a lot of topic at FEMA. There was many people were talking about it there, and yeah, and hopefully we can use its power for the good ethically,
Exactly.
and that could be really powerful. So, what is the legacy that you think our generation, in terms of like food heroes in our food industry, what would you like our generation of leaders to accomplish in our industry?
Yeah, I think it's nice to give something back. First of all, I mean, when I'm thinking of myself, I'm on the IFMA board here. I know you're on the FEMA board. It's the IFMA board is probably more food service related, but I like the people that are on the board. I
That's
think
always helpful.
it's very helpful. I think I joined at a time when 6 or 7 individuals joined as well. The board is a great. It's not a lobbying board or anything like that. We talk about the issues in the industry and what's coming down the line. What are the challenges? How do we influence them? It's really about the food away from home ecosystem.
And being on a board is such service. It's
It
of
is.
service. And it's a lot of work. And definitely you do it for the passion of the board that you're on.
Absolutely. You do it for the passion of the board that you're on, and you do it for the people, and you do it for your, for the industry.
Exactly.
Because it's nice to give something back to the industry, and even though it is, on top of your own job, which can be demanding and challenging, it is nice to be able to give something back from that perspective and be part of a tenure of business people that are giving something back and maybe paving the way for the future of what the food away from home ecosystem means for operators, manufacturers, operators, and consumers, and that's kind of the discussions we have. As regards, I think this generation has been good in what sustainability means from the planet perspective. I think this generation will, with all the work that's going on, it's hard to quantify, but I think we will hand the planet over to the next generation, probably in better condition
Then
than
we
maybe
got it.
we got it, or was taught out at maybe previous generations. I think that's very important. I think ways of working, simplification on ways of working, things like that. How we do things, there is a lot of technology there. I think and I also think maybe training development is at a higher level now than it would have been, I'd say, by more generation, making sure people have an engagement, appreciation, recognition, all of those things. I think the standard has lifted across the industry. It had to, but I think it has. So I think they're kind of the big areas I would call out.
Creativity.
Yeah.
I think people are allowed to be a little more
Thought
out of the box,
leadership.
thought leadership. Yeah. Okay. So what's the legacy that you would like to leave behind personally?
To be honest with you, it's something I hadn't really thought about until you asked me to come here. Maybe there's a couple of things. One is I'd like to feel that I made a difference, and the team, to the Kerry business here in North America in my tenure and over my tenure with Kerry. The second thing is I'd like to feel I attracted and developed talent that's come into the organisation that go on and hopefully be the leaders of the future. And then the third thing I would say is what I said earlier there, just about giving something back. I'd like to feel I was part of a generation that gave something back, and in some shape or form, and that's been part of initiatives from an industry perspective, a broad industry perspective, or maybe a board,
Right.
which I am today. So they're
I
kind
really appreciated your participation in Female Strong. And
Yeah,
that, I
absolutely.
mean, that's, and having a daughter, I'm sure is that your why? And you have so many women, probably, and young women that, yeah.
huge part of our population, but I do have a son and daughter. My wife and I, we always say that we'd like our daughter to say what she does as son,
Right.
which is very important. And it gives you a perspective.
It does. And I think some of the statistics that Emily will share at Female Strong, a lot of these young girls, their confidence just so drops at like from 6th to 8th grade, and how that changes, like that mindset, just there's some like switch that goes off.
I mean, my eyes were opened that evening to
Oh, good.
the entrepreneurialism that was around the room, and one or two of those individuals have reached out to me, and I've put them in contact with people in Kerry who hopefully can
Oh,
help them.
that's awesome.
So,
See, I love that.
So I was delighted for the invite. Thank you very much.
I'm so glad you came. It's so cool to see it, and their confidence really when they're presenting, most of them is really good.
Yeah.
I'm sure that takes a lot of practice to get there, but yeah, I agree with you. I think that's a great legacy, you know, making a difference in people's lives. Well, thank you very much for joining me.
Thank you,
It's
Laurette.
been a really nice conversation, and I think our
Appreciate
listeners
it.
are going to get a lot of value and a lot of things they can take away, which is always the goal.
I hope so.
I hope
Thank you
so
for the
too.
invite.
Thank you.